everyone, my name is Judy Dinsipol Beda at ang aking i-report for today is a framework for ethical decision making and business.
Let's watch this video presentation to gain knowledge about the framework for ethical decision making in business.
Lesson objectives are basically to talk about the 5 basic principles of ethical decision making, the importance of ethical decision making, to explain the step-by-step process of making ethical decisions, to explain the different frameworks of ethical decision making, and applying the framework to situations. So the 5 basic principles that all ethical decisions basically base themselves off of. Number 1 is the value of life. No ethics without human life. So without human beings, there can be no ethics. Number 2 is goodness or rightness. So all theories strive for this. That includes non-maleficence and beneficence, so not harming others, but rather benefiting them instead. Number 3 is justice or fairness. So treating others fairly, differentiating between goodness and badness. Number 4 is honesty. Communication is key, so there is a need for a strong attempt to at least try and be truthful. Number 5 is individual freedom or autonomy, so respecting the individual's decisions. Basically, that means that people, being individuals with differences, must have freedom to choose their own way. So making ethical decisions, professional health educators must rely on their values and intuition when making decisions. They must possess skills and knowledge when deciding on the best possible outcome. The decision-making process should occur before an ethical issue arises. Usually a problem occurs when 2 or more principles are involved. And making the right ethical decision is also considered a form of primary prevention. So steps in ethical decision-making. Number 1, define the problem. Identify the ethical issues and seek answers to relevant questions. 2, identify who will be affected. 3, contemplate ultimate goals and ideals for a moral person. 4, identify alternatives. 5, consider the probable consequences of each alternative. 6, consider the nature of the alternatives. 7, reflect on yourself. 8, reflect on your society and your environment. 9, apply the categorical imperative. And 10, choose, act your choice, and monitor and evaluate the end results. So there are 3 frameworks for ethical decision making. The first one is the consequentialist framework, and this basically just focuses on the future effects and possible outcomes that affect people directly or indirectly. And this is useful for situations that involve a large group of people, but it's not always liked because people have to compromise. Number 2 is duty framework. This focuses on the duties and obligations that individuals face in each situation. So this framework has rules and expectations for everyone, and it has the advantage of creating a system of rules that has consistent expectations of all people, and it also focuses on following moral rules or duty regardless of outcome. Number 3 is the virtue framework, so identifying character traits to motivate us in each situation, considers all parts of their experiences and their role in an ethical deliberation. So this is useful in situations that ask what sort of person one should be, and because it's based off of experience, it makes situations harder to resolve disagreements, since there can be more disputes regarding virtuous traits rather than ethical actions.
So, we have 5 sources of ethical standards. First, the utilitarian approach. Sometimes, ethicists emphasize that the ethical action is the one that provides the most good or does the less harm. Or to put it another way, produces the greatest balance of good over harm. The ethical corporate action then is the one that produces the greatest good and does the less harm for all who are affected. Customers, employees, stakeholders, the community, and the environment. Ethical warfare balances they could achieve in ending terrorism with the harm done to all parties through death, injuries, and destruction. The utilitarian approach deals with consequences. It tries both to increase the good done and to reduce the harm done.
The utilitarian approach is that they work or find a way to avoid things that can harm and affect the stakeholders, customers, employees, and so on. This is what they are looking for, a way to avoid being in trouble with people who can affect them, especially in a company with many competitors who are more careful and do good to others.
And the second, the right approach. Other philosophers and ethicists suggest that the ethical action is the one that best protects and respects the moral rights of those affected. This approach starts from the belief that humans have dignity, based on their human nature, per se, or on their ability to choose freely what they do with their lives. On the basis of such dignity, they have a right to be treated as ends and not merely as means to other ends. The list of moral rights, including the rights to make one's own choices about what kind of life to live, to be told the truth, not to be injured, to a degree of privacy, and so on. It's widely debated. Some now argue that non-humans have rights too. It is often said that rights imply duties, in particular the duty to respect others' rights.
Of course, we cannot live in this world if we do not have moral rights. This is the most important things we hold in our lives, but to do what is right and good for all of us.
Third, the fairness or justice approach. Aristotle and the other Greek philosophers have contributed the idea that all equals should be treated equally. Today, we use this idea to say that ethical actions treat all human beings equally or if unequally, then fairly based on some standard that is defensible. We pay people more based on their harder work or the greater amount that they contribute to an organization. We say that is fair, but there is a debate over CEO salaries that are hundreds of times larger than the pay of others. Many ask whether the huge disparity is based on a defensible standard or whether it is the result of an imbalance of power and hence is unfair.
Let us be fair in all things, whether in work or in his world, as Aristotle says. All will be treated equally, because we all have the right to complain and give justice to every mistake that one must correct. But everyone pays differently, because when you do a hard work and love your work, it will pay you more than you work hard. But when you are lazy, of course, you know first what it will bring back to you. All treated equally, but the compensation will be different from what you did.
Fourth, the common good approach. The Greek philosophers have also contributed the notion that life in community is a good in itself and our actions should contribute to that life. This approach suggests that the interlocking relationships of society are the basis of ethical reasoning and that respect and compassion for all others, especially the vulnerable, are requirements of the such reasoning. This approach also calls attention to the common conditions that are important to the welfare of everyone. This may be a system of law, effective police and fire departments, healthcare, and a public educational system, or even public recreational areas.
The common good, this is what you include yourself in something that everything you do in our society helps the lives of others, even yourself suffering, but you do the right thing in your life. Here that includes the law, healthcare, and etc. As long as you do what is right for your life and the lives of others.
And last, the virtue approach, a very ancient approach to ethics, is that ethical actions ought to be consistent with certain ideal virtues that provide for the full development of our humanity. These virtues are dispositions and habits that enable us to act according to the highest potential of our character and on behalf of values like truth and beauty. Honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, tolerance, love, fidelity, integrity, fairness, self-control, and prudence are all examples of virtue. Virtue ethics asks of any action, what kind of person will I become if I do this? Or is this action consistent with my acting that's my best?
Here, who it serves as a person in what kind of person you are. You're always thinking about what kind of person you are and everything you do what other people say. Are you a good or bad person as long as you do the first step in ethical decision making is to recognize that an ethical issue requires an individual or work group to choose among several actions that various stakeholders inside or outside. The firm will ultimately evaluate as right or wrong. The first step is becoming aware that an ethical issue exists. Ethical awareness is the ability to perceive whether a situation or decision has an ethical dimension. Costly problems can be avoided if employees are able to first recognize whether a situation has an ethical component. However, ethical awareness can be difficult in an environment when employees work in their own areas or expertise with the same type of people. It is easier to overlook certain issues requiring an ethical decision, particularly if the decision becomes a routine part each of the job. This makes it important for organizations to train employees how to recognize the potential ethical ramifications of their decisions. Familiarizing employees with company values and training them to recognize common ethical scenarios can help them develop ethical awareness. The intensity of an ethical issue relates to its perceived importance to the decision maker. Ethical issue intensity can be defined as the relevance or importance of an event or decision in the eyes of the individual, work group, and or organization. It is personal and temporal in character to accommodate values, beliefs, needs, perceptions, the special characteristics of the situation, and the personal pressure prevailing at a particular place and time. Moral intensity relates to individuals' perceptions of social pressure and the harm they believe their decisions will have on others. We proceed the individual factors. When people need to resolve issues in their daily lives, they often base their decisions on their own values and principles of right or wrong. They generally learn these values and principles through the socialization process with family members, social groups, religion, and in their formal education. Good personal values have been found to decrease unethical practices and increase positive to work behavior. Extensive research has been done regarding the link between gender and ethical decision making. The research shows that in many aspects, there are no differences between men and women. But when differences are found, women are generally more ethical than men. By more ethical, we mean women seem to be more sensitive to ethical scenarios and less tolerant of unethical actions. Education is also a significant factor in the ethical decision-making process. The important things to remember about education is that it does not reflect experience Work experience is defined as the number of years in a specific job, occupation, or industry. Nationality is the legal relationship between a person in the country in which he or she is born. In the 21st century, nationality is redefined by regional economic integration, such as the European Union. When European students are asked their nationality, they are less likely to state where they were born than where they currently live. Age is another individual factors researched within business ethics. Several decades ago, we believed age was positively correlated with ethical decision making. In other words, the older you are, locus of control relates to individual differences in relation to our generalized beliefs about how you are affected by internal versus external events or reinforcements. In the works, how the concept relates to how people view themselves in relation to power. Those who believe in external control see themselves as going with the flow because that is all they can do. They believe the events in their lives are due to uncontrollable forces. They consider what they want to achieve depends on luck, chance, and powerful people in their company. In addition, they believe the probability of being able to control their lives by their own actions and effort is low. Conversely, those who believe in internal control or internals believe that they control the events in their lives by their own effort and skill, viewing themselves as master of their destinies and trusting in their capacity to influence their environment. Current research suggests we still cannot be sure how significant locus of control is in terms of ethical decision making. One study that found a relationship between locus of control and ethical decision making concluded that internals were positively correlated, whereas external were negatively correlated. In other words, those who believed they formed their own destiny were more ethical than those who believed their fate was in the hands of others.